Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside. You know him. You love him. Give it up for Father Joe Grimaldi.
Good to be here.
Always good to be alongside the good Father. The Father Joe podcast is proudly supported by Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road, east of Telegraph in Southfield. Want to talk to you about the all-new 2019 Lincoln Nautilus. You get an impressive twin-turbocharged 2.7-liter engine with a fuel economy rating of 27 miles per gallon. 22-way adjustable seats, a Rebel audio system, a panoramic Vista sunroof, and an absolutely incredible tech package. Make sure to ask about instant savings. Those savings are available as well on the full lineup of Houghton McInerney Star Lincolns, including the Lincoln MKC. I've been in it a lot, and I love it. Stop on by and make sure you tell them you heard about Star Lincoln on the Father Joe podcast. Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln on 12 Mile Road, just east of Telegraph, or visit starlincoln.com. Okay. Well, here we are. The Lenten season is upon us,
Right.
Going into week 2 of Lent. And, of course, you've given up what for Lent? Do you mind if I ask?
I do things instead.
That's right. It's better to add than
Right.
to subtract. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Well, good for you. I have given up being mean to you.
You're never mean.
Well,
You're never ornery.
Well, I do my very best.
Okay.
Had a little moment of artistic pique a few moments ago, but everything's fine now.
That's okay.
So we're talking about Lent. It all started with Fat Tuesday, and then, of course, Ash Wednesday, first Sunday of Lent, and now we're in.
We're
Lent.
into it.
It's Lent. The purples are out,
Yeah.
and they'll be out now for another 30 days. A large part of Lent is, of course, fasting or giving, all right? It's also a time for prayer, correct?
Sure it is.
And how do I approach prayer any differently during Lent?
I don't think it has to be differently. I think Lent is almost like a learning experience into spirituality, because the things that we do is for the sake of discipline. And we discipline ourselves in order to become better people. And so that we pray, we give alms, we fast, basically to learn discipline.
The area that I wanted to spend on for this podcast, what can I do better in Lent? I'm working on my discipline, okay?
Yeah.
I stay solid with prayer, all right?
Well, I'm sure
I'm trying to reach out a little more than maybe I normally would.
I think that you normally do. You're the kind of person, I think anyway, that you share what you have with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about. Now, in case we forget, Lent says, hey, this is what we have to do. Let's get strong in that area of almsgiving, because our neighbor next door doesn't have enough food to have dinner tonight. So we've got to make sure that they can also eat. Almsgiving is certainly one part of it. Prayer, we better get steady in our prayer life. And then, of course, fasting, which is really another form of disciplining ourselves so that we become better people. I don't think it's not a rocket science as science. It's more that this is time for us, hey, let's concentrate on these things so that for the rest of the year we can continue to do these things.
It's sort of a replication of Jesus in the desert, 40 days, 40 nights, correct?
Yeah.
You know, where he spent a lot of time being tempted by the devil, spending a lot of time thinking, praying, doing all of these things.
Right.
A concentration of 40 days. So in that concentration, sort of like cleaning up all of the circuits in the circuit board.
Yeah, it is, because it also focused on his mission. In other words, one of the things that we could do during Lent is to focus on what is our purpose in life. Is it just to get up in the morning, go to work, come home, have dinner, go watch TV, and then the next morning do the same thing? Or is it that we have a mission? What do we want to accomplish with our lives? As they say, Lent is a time to hone our skills, okay?
Discipline.
To make them strong. And so to make discipline part of our lives so that when Lent is over with and we celebrate Easter, salvation, all of these good things, we don't forget that we still have to share what we have with other people. We're still supposed to discipline ourselves so that we could become better people. And we don't forget that we still have to pray. So it's a time when we become more intent on those things so that we become stronger for the rest of the time.
Well, I think it's so important to take from each and every season, and once the application is developed during Lent, you stick with it.
Correct.
So in essence, what you're doing year after year is adding a little more, improving your almsgiving.
Hopefully. You become more sensitive.
Yes.
In other words, because we're doing it in such a strong way during Lent, we become more sensitive to our neighbors. We become more sensitive to people in other countries because, let's face it, we're blessed in these United States. We have so much, and we take for granted and think that everybody else lives the same way that we do until you start looking at what goes on in other countries, and then we're shocked. But I think it's important that we recognize the fact that we have to share what the Lord has given us.
Are churches more active this time of year? Do you find more people in the seats? An expression that I use, by the way, that in the pews.
Oh, no, it makes sense.
Do you notice a larger population going to church in Lent?
Well, probably during morning Mass. Because the weekends, those who go will go on a regular basis. But during the weekdays, I think there may be a few more people that are attending weekday Masses.
You were talking about also giving. That was one of the most successful podcasts in terms of raw numbers that we've ever done. What are you giving up for Lent? No, I'm giving too for Lent. I'm giving of myself. I'm not taking anything away. I'm going to give. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with alms. And we've talked about various things that people can do. I'll take, for example, does anyone ever just go to a hospital and visit people? I mean, that seems odd to do. But if you have friends in the hospital, you should go visit them.
Better to have somebody that you know offer a smile.
Right.
It gives you strength. And there are ministries of people that just go from room to room visiting, particularly these days when people are paying so much attention to pets and dogs.
Yeah.
And so that many of the hospitals have that particular ministry where people who have dogs that are trained for that particular
service
reason.
Dogs, yeah. And
service to the other people, not to the individual.
Well, but what I mean is, I remember, I think he's still there because I was in the hospital a number of times in regular successions every month, and there was Tyler, this beautiful black lab.
Right.
And he had his little vest on, and he would come in. He was there just to visit.
Right.
To walk into the room and just sort of let you pet him, and it just sort of made all your problems go away.
And there are people that do that on a regular basis. You will know. You experienced it. So it is something that happens.
I'm going to stop you for a second because I always remember this. My uncle Chuck, wonderful man, wonderful man, lost his wife, and he was looking for things to do. Very, very, very Catholic. He loved to go to Mass, and he would go to Mass often over at Providence Hospital's chapel. He liked it so much that he all of a sudden took on one of those free, you're working for free behind the desk.
Sure.
And he was a greeter. He was basically a greeter. He was the most wonderful guy in the world. You couldn't have picked a better guy, but he was doing this 4 or 5 hours every single day.
Yeah.
And he was fulfilled. He loved it. He was lonely no more.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things, right?
Definitely. We could become fickle about giving up, if you want, when you say, well, I'm giving up chocolate so I could lose a few pounds.
Yeah, right.
Well, what kind of a sacrifice is that? And yet, when you're giving your time to do something that's going to be worthy for helping others and things of this sort, I think that's where the sense of giving your time makes sense. Or maybe helping students who need more help in math or English or whatever the case might be, tutoring instead of just for money, but tutoring someone, maybe a neighbor's kid or maybe something like that. Visiting hospitals, visiting the sick, visiting nursing homes.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I find is that it's a very lonely life for many of the people that are in a nursing home, because they sense, and it may not be true, but they feel nobody ever visits, nobody ever calls, nobody ever writes. There's no cards and so on and so forth. Where is everybody? Well, so for you or for someone to make a visit to somebody, wow, it brightens up their days. I even remember visiting somebody I knew, and then the neighbor was saying, hey, could you come and say hello to me too? Because it means something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even though you don't know the individual, it certainly means something to have another human being to take part in a visit with them. So there are a lot of little things that we can do, as we explained in a previous podcast. But
I think refreshing people is always a good thing to do.
No, it is. But I think it's important that we do that. Almsgiving, Elemosina is the word where you're giving to those in need. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, the church is always in need, but that's why you have your weekly collection. This is why you have the diocesan collection, and so on. But Lent is more a time, in my mind, to share what we have with those who don't. And it doesn't have to be the homeless. It doesn't have to be the people next door. It could be also being conscious of other countries, at least knowing that there are countries that are not as blessed as we are.
You know, look at what's going on right now in Venezuela. I mean, for example, I think they're going on 6, maybe 7 days without power. And it's so hard to watch. It really is. But, you know, that's what we tend to do. We tend to watch and go, oh, that's
Isn't
so
that
sad.
Too bad, yeah.
Well, you know what? There are areas not too far from your home that are almost as desolate and as bad as that is. Those are areas that you can get involved in. One of the things about radio and television that, well, we all learned it because it was part of the fabric of broadcasting, was you needed to be and wanted to be involved with community affairs. And I remember so many times, especially around the holidays, ringing the bell for the Salvation Army. Well, that was, freezing cold, and nobody groused. You didn't go, oh, I have better things to do on a Saturday than standing outside ringing a damn bell. How dare you? I mean, there were people that you heard say that. You did. But the one great thing about it was that you really learned that it's not just, look at me. No, I'm over here. Look at me. I'm Ken Calvert. No, it's not all about you, Ken Calvert. You're blessed to have this job. You're blessed to have these listeners, and your influence goes a heck of a long way. I remember one time, twice, 3 times maybe, being part of a Habitat for Humanity, building a house.
Sure.
Now, you don't want me near a hammer, okay? I'll just tell you that right now, especially today.
Your fingers don't want you there either. No, but hammering.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm all thumbs. But I was great at, running for water and maybe holding up a wall when people needed, some heavy lifting, literally some heavy lifting. So those were the things that I really, I came away feeling great. And I think people don't realize that's the reward on the other side.
Yeah, especially when you're living in big cities, huh? Mm-hmm. New York, Detroit, Chicago, and so on. Because usually in the small towns of middle America and so on and so forth, everybody knows everybody else. Mm. In the big cities like Detroit, we don't know the people who are suffering maybe just 3 or 4 miles south of us or north of us, whatever the case might be. Same thing is true in New York because it's such a big city, a conglomeration of all kinds of people, and you don't recognize that there are people that are not as lucky.
Oh, I realize that. You can't help it. One of the things about social media that I do like, and it's getting back to the fact, giving. Giving is really the operative word here, I think.
Right.
You are doing a good thing by giving. And like I said, one of the nice things about social media is when you do see a whole bunch of celebrities, and I forget, and I'm bad me for this, but last weekend there was a big thing where all of the celebrities, both radio and TV, cook soup and were test my soup, and you got in line if you wanted a cup of soup from a beat writer, somebody that wrote for the Detroit Lions, or one of the Detroit Lions, or from one of the broadcasters, you had to pony up 50 cents. to have a little bit of soup. You just get a small cup, but it all went to a great cause, and everybody had a great time.
Oh, sure.
So it's things like that. But listen, I did most of the talking, didn't I?
You did a good job.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's...
I think so.
And I think in a good way, this podcast is a bit of almsgiving. We're sort of trying to give direction.
Reminding ourselves.
Yeah, you see, that's exactly what I was trying to say. By doing this podcast, I remind myself that I need discipline, I need prayer, and I need to keep giving, right?
Exactly.
All right, I think we did a nice job.
It's terrific.
I'm Ken Calvert along with Father Joe. We'll see you next time on the Father Joe podcast, brought to us by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield.
Looking forward to it. Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.